A musical film is incredibly difficult to get right. I often find that they wind up being terrible to mediocre at best. There are a few exceptions to this, and I think that In the Heights is one of those exceptions. If you've been around the channel for a while now, you know I have a quite a strict guide and criteria when it comes to adapting a musical from stage to screen. This can be summed up in two things. You need to actually adapt and change things, and you need to stylize. Theatre and film are two very different mediums, and I don't think it ever really works just filming it and just hoping it will translate. There's a lot of work you have to put in to making a musical film adaptation. And honestly, there are a lot of musicals that I don't think would ever work as films. Two of them have been made by the same director because he loves doing them for some reason. But this also applies in the vice versa. There are some films that I don't think would work as stage musicals. So you change things, you quicken the pace, you change locations, you make it more cinematic. Of course, this might mean that storylines might have to be cut and things might have to be changed, and even favourite songs might be missing from the film, but sadly that's what has to happen sometimes. But the most important thing is stylization. Breaking into song and dance is not natural. It's not a natural thing to do. But the thing about a stage musical is when you're watching it on stage, you have a natural suspension of disbelief. You know these are just actors on a stage, but in a film, because it's being filmed on location and stuff like that, it's a lot harder to get that sense of disbelief. So the way around this is to make it more stylized. Through cinematography, through the acting. Think how a film like Hairspray will camp it up and make it all big and lively and colourful. Things like that. And stylising your filmmaking can give you the sense of disbelief that you don't often get in cinema. Now, straight away, I can say that In the Heights is a smart choice to turn into a film. It's not like Cats or Les Mis where it's so far out there that there's no way to stylize it to work in such a different medium. In the Heights could honestly work as a film on its own if you cut out all the music, because it's a very character-driven ensemble show with a lot of ups and downs and a lot of drama. But the way they adapt the story and the music to the screen is honestly just incredible. The film follows the general story of the musical, but it changes the way we get to the end. I'll go more in depth into the actual changes that they make in the spoiler section of the review, but what I'll say is that I think this version, at the end of the day, works best for the screen. I don't want to choose which one is the better one because I feel like I may have a natural bias towards the original because that's the one that I saw first. That's the one that I know. I think this version is paced well. It has all the important beats that it needs to hit. It gets the stories right and it still attaches you to the characters, which is the most important thing about this show. And it still packs a punch where it needs to. It's been a long while since I've cried at a film, but In the Heights managed to hit me emotionally throughout the entire runtime. I still think there's one or two songs that they could have fit in. There is one song that is missing that I feel like really could have worked, and I really mourn its disappearance in this film. But I can very easily forgive this when I look at the quality of everything that they did put in. So let's talk about the quality of it. Let's talk about the stylization, because it is beautiful. There are so many wonderful sequences that are just so visually interesting to watch. I also like how they really experiment with the filmmaking as well. A lot of the time, if you're trying to go for a natural filmmaking, you just play with the lighting. It's what The Prom did for the entirety of the film. But I can really see the thought process of how they went about stylizing every song in this film. And they really think of new, inventive things to do. I absolutely love how they brought to life Nomi Diga and In the Heights and the opening verse of 96,000. And the cast is absolutely fantastic. This is what we ask for when we're talking about putting Broadway actors in films. We're not asking for the original cast about 10 years after they've played the roles on Broadway when they're all too old for it. And I know it can often be a safe bet to cast a lot of well-known stars in films, but sometimes you don't need it, and sometimes it lessens the film as a whole. In the Heights gets a nice balance to this, having its cake and eating it too. We get a cast of Broadway stars, singers, people like Anthony Ramos and Lin Manuel Miranda, who are big names in themselves, but also can sing and can act in a medium that isn't just theatre. Let's talk about Anthony Ramos, because he is Usnavi. It almost feels like it was written for him. He's charismatic, funny, and a great narrator for the film. I also like the changes that they made to how he narrates the story. There's a lot of fourth wall breaking in the musical, and they keep a lot of this, but the way that they justify it in the story is that he's telling this to some children in the Dominican Republic. I love this. It keeps that wall breaking aesthetic, but also keeps it grounded a lot more. Honestly, I could say so much about every cast member in this film. Lin Manuel Miranda gets a really fun cameo. Corey Hawkins and Leslie Grace both shine as Benny and Nina. And out of all the supporting lead cast, I really like Stephanie Beatrice. And of course I can't forget Olga Merediz, who reprises her role as Claudia from the Broadway production, because now she's actually the right age to play the part. Ironically, that worked out very well for you. But she just delivers a performance, and especially her main song, Pasentia Fe, with such power. It's honestly such an amazing performance. It's such an amazing performance from the entire cast. Now, before I dive into spoilers, I want to mention the obvious. I am white. Now, I can obviously look at this film and find stuff I relate to. Of course I do. There's a lot of very human stories in there. For example, I can say that I was extremely moved and I found myself very much in Nina's storyline. Of course, there's differences just naturally, but it's the closest to what I'm going through in my own life. But there's a lot I can't relate to. Such as I can't relate to immigrating from a different country. I can't even relate to being an American. I'm not American. I can't relate to the Latino experience. But I feel like this film is open to everyone. It builds this image of a community so tight-knit and all struggling to achieve their own dreams. And I know how important this film is for the Latinx community to see themselves on screen, this absolute celebration of their culture and their identity. My last video was all about representation and how representation has helped me in the past when I was trying to come to terms with sexuality and even now coming to terms with gender and stuff like that. It means a lot to people to see themselves represented on screen. And I know there is a lot of controversy at the moment saying that the film didn't go far enough, that there should have been more Afro-Latinas in the film. And I think this is very important to address, which is why it's here. But I think it's also good to appreciate that this is still a step forward, even if the step hasn't taken us the full journey. Okay, this is your spoiler warning. This is your spoiler warning. If you don't want spoilers, skip to the time stamp on screen right now. You've been warned. Spoilers. Big spoilers. Spoilers in 3, 2, 1, go. Okay. I think this film's strong suit is how much you attach to these characters. As I said, Nina's storyline is the one that I relate to the most. She made it to university, and the whole neighbourhood, in her own words, is counting on her to succeed. Then there's Usnavi and Vanessa's stories, who both have big dreams of wanting to leave the community, but both realising that their place is here. I love the themes that it carries of legacy and the things we leave behind, which ironically is a big part of both of Lin Manuel Miranda's 2 Broadway musicals that he wrote on his own. And then there's Claudia's story of being a first generation immigrant and the struggles that come along with that. I absolutely love the way that her song Pasentia Fe is staged in the film. Staged isn't really the right word, but I'm gonna use it. You get what I mean. And her death is the moment that completely broke me. I feel like speaks leaps and bounds how emotionally affected I was by her passing away, about how the film managed to connect with me. Now, I previously mentioned that the film does make a lot of changes, and I think that is an understatement. There is a lot of changes. Whole storylines and characters are cut out. I think these changes are understandable, and I think that we can also appreciate that their absence is a shame. I think this is always the double-edged sword with a musical film adaptation, but I look at it like this. The film doesn't erase the musical, and the musical doesn't erase the film. Both can be enjoyed for different reasons. Something just fell down. That was really fun, wasn't it? That was the greatest time to fall off my wall, thank you. But honestly, I really wish that they did still include Everything I Know. I feel like that song would have given that extra punch to the death of Claudia. I can understand why it's cut, but I do feel like it's a shame that it isn't there. However, there is one change that I will say that I outright don't like, and it is kind of nitpicky, but I feel like it would have fixed one of the film's problems, and it comes down to the lottery ticket. In the Heights on stage has this big on-running thread of the lottery ticket, who won the lottery ticket, and we find out very quickly that it was Abuela, it was Claudia. We find this out towards the end of Act 1 in the musical, but we don't find it out in the film until the last 10 minutes. The problem I have with this is that it kind of leaves the lottery subplot feeling very aimless until the very end of the film. But I feel like it's such a big thing. The whole number of 96,000 is such a big moment that it kind of feels odd to Chekhov's gun it. With the changes that they made, I feel like the best time to show who won the lottery ticket would be Percent Fay, where they place it in the film, which is just after Blackout. It's a small change, but I feel like it would have helped with that. I feel like they put such a big emphasis on the lottery ticket only for it to not be important until the very end. I feel like if they brought that further forward, it would have made a bit more sense. When it comes down to it, I can't say that In the Heights is perfect, but I think it's pretty much as close as you can get. Apart from the one negative thing that I mentioned in the spoiler section, I think the film delivers on the marketing aspect of the film of the summer with such a diverse, beautiful, stylized film that's full of heart and a range of songs performed extremely well by a cast of actors so perfectly cast. It's just such a good watch. It's one of those films that I feel like I could watch again and again. I probably could have even watched it straight after finishing it over again. That's how good of a watch it is. It's a film that embraces its musicality as any good musical film should. As any good musical should. And it gives us this brilliant story about legacy, dreams, and communities. Now say it, so it doesn't disappear.